My brother's accident changed his life, and my parents never forgave me for walking away. And then, growing up, my younger brother Nathan and I were inseparable. Our parents made sure of it. We were put on the same sports teams, sent to the same summer camps, even had shared birthday parties. But even as kids, it was obvious. Nathan was the favorite. He had this effortless charm, the kind of person who could say something completely idiotic in class and still get laughs instead of detention. He was athletic, outgoing, and the golden child my parents loved to show off at family gatherings. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more bookish. I preferred reading in the corner while Nathan basked in the spotlight. I didn't mind, not really. I figured that was just how things were. The favoritism was always there, but I ignored it. I told myself it wasn't a competition. After all, we were siblings. We had each other's backs. That changed a year ago. Nathan and I were driving home from a family event late at night. The road was mostly empty, and we were joking about a terrible movie we had just seen when it happened. A pair of headlights appeared out of nowhere, swerving straight into our lane. I barely had time to react before the impact. When I woke up in the hospital, I was groggy but mostly fine. Bruises, a few stitches, nothing major. But Nathan wasn't so lucky. A spinal cord injury left him paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors said he'd never walk again. At first, our parents were relieved that I was okay. But the moment they saw Nathan in that hospital bed, something shifted. My mother didn't cry, didn't even ask if I was okay. Instead, she looked at me and said, "Why couldn't it have been you?" My father stood beside her, silent, staring at me like I had personally put Nathan in that wheelchair. For the first few days, Nathan didn't blame me. We even made dark jokes about it, the kind that made the nurses uncomfortable. He told me I'd have to push his wheelchair at my wedding, and I laughed, thinking we were still the same. But our parents weren't laughing. They hovered over his bed, whispering when they thought I wasn't listening. He should have done more. He was the one driving. It's not fair. Nathan started changing. It was subtle at first, shorter replies, avoiding eye contact. Then the comments started. "Must be nice, walking around like nothing happened. I guess you get to just live your life, huh?" I tried not to let it get to me. I reminded myself that he was grieving, that he was dealing with something unimaginable. But our parents encouraged it. They fed his resentment, whispering in his ear about how unfair it was, how I had gotten off easy. They started treating me like an outsider in my own family. Then came the moment that made me realize just how far things had gone. My mother pulled me aside one day and told me I needed to apologize. For what? I asked. For ruining his future. She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I refused. I wasn't going to apologize for surviving. And that was the first time I saw real hatred in her eyes. After that, things escalated. Our grandparents had set aside an inheritance for both of us, equal amounts. But suddenly, my parents decided I didn't need mine anymore. They wanted me to give it all to Nathan. For his medical bills, they said. For his new life. I told them I'd contribute, but I wasn't giving up everything. That wasn't good enough. The family started cutting me out. Family dinners, vacations, holidays. I found out about them through social media, through cousins posting pictures with captions like "family is everything" while I wasn't even invited. When I confronted my mother, she just said, "You made your choice." Nathan echoed her words. "You don't get it. You have everything I lost." Friends started taking sides. Some understood that I had done nothing wrong. Others told me I should be doing more. "It's just money," one of them said. "Just help him out." I suggested therapy. A neutral third party who could help us actually talk about what had happened. My mother scoffed. "Therapy won't make him walk again." Then she told me I was selfish for trying to move on with my life. She asked how I could think about dating when my brother was still suffering. That was when I knew the truth. It didn't matter what I did. They would never see me as anything other than the person who walked away while Nathan didn't. I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was their scapegoat. A few weeks after I stopped trying to force a relationship with my parents and Nathan, I got a call from a family friend. The moment she hesitated before speaking, I knew it was bad news. They had a fundraiser, she finally said. I had no idea what she was talking about at first. A fundraiser? For Nathan? No one had mentioned anything to me. Then she explained. My parents had organized a massive event. Extended family, old friends, even people from their church had shown up to raise money for Nathan's medical expenses. I wasn't invited. At first, I thought maybe they assumed I wouldn't want to come. Maybe they didn't think I'd be interested. That thought didn't last long, because my name did come up, not as part of the support system, not as someone to be thanked. They used it to shame me. According to my friend, my father gave a long speech about how family is supposed to support each other in times of need and how some people had chosen to turn their backs. Then my mother started crying in front of the crowd. She sobbed about how hard it was to watch Nathan struggle while some people, meaning me, were living comfortably and doing nothing. The donation page was public, and sure enough, my name was nowhere to be found. But my parents made sure everyone there knew I hadn't contributed a single penny. When I saw the pictures online, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Nathan was sitting at the front, smiling, surrounded by family. My parents stood beside him, hands on his shoulders, the perfect picture of a loving, supportive family. A cousin had posted one of the photos with the caption, "Supporting those who actually deserve it." I didn't even have to ask what that meant. I called my parents immediately. My father picked up, and there wasn't even an attempt to deny it. "You should be doing more," he said, his tone neutral. Like this was just a fact. Like it was logical, obvious. I almost laughed in disbelief. I offered to help. I reminded him. I just wasn't going to give up everything. That wasn't enough, my mother cut in. "You should have done the right thing from the start." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Instead, I texted Nathan directly. No lectures. No accusations. Just one simple question. "Do you really believe I owe you for what happened?" His response came quickly. "You have everything I lost. You should give something back." That was all I needed to hear. A few days later, I got another call, this time from my grandfather, Walter. He controls the inheritance fund, and he wanted to let me know that my parents had tried to access my money without my permission. They even tried to claim power of attorney, arguing that it was for the good of the family. Thankfully, my grandfather refused. He made it clear that I was the only one who could touch my inheritance. But the fact that they had even tried made my blood run cold. That night, my mother sent a long text. She didn't deny anything. She went full emotional manipulation mode. Nathan was suffering every day. I was lucky to have a normal life. How could I be so selfish? I didn't respond. The next day, mutual friends started reaching out. Some tried to be neutral. Others actually confronted Nathan, telling him that what he was doing wasn't fair. His response: "Mind your business." That's when the real pressure started. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't spoken to me in months were suddenly all over my phone. They demanded to know why I was being so cruel, why I wouldn't just do the right thing. Some outright called me a disgrace. It was coordinated, a full-scale attack. And when I didn't respond the way they wanted, my parents changed tactics. The gaslighting began. Suddenly, I started getting messages saying I was being dramatic. No one actually blamed me. It was all in my head. Meanwhile, Nathan posted a vague tweet that got a ton of attention. Some people show their true colors when times get hard. The replies were exactly what you'd expect. People calling him brave, offering support, asking who had betrayed him. A few people tagged me. Then one of my cousins sent me screenshots from a private family group chat. The messages were worse than I expected. My mother straight up called me a disappointment. My father said I was abandoning Nathan. Some relatives jumped in, calling me selfish beyond words. The only person who defended me? My grandfather. He told them all that if they wanted to drain their own bank accounts for Nathan, they were welcome to. But I wasn't obligated to do anything. That night, I decided I needed to talk to Nathan one last time. In person. When I showed up at my parents' house, my mother barely acknowledged me. My father wouldn't even look at me. But Nathan was waiting. I told him the truth. I wasn't abandoning him. I wanted to help. But I wouldn't be manipulated. He just stared at me. Then he shook his head. "You'll never understand." That was the last real conversation we had. When I turned to leave, my father finally spoke. "If you're not willing to support your brother, then you're not welcome here." And that was it. No more pretending. No more guilt tripping. Either I gave up my inheritance, or I was out of the family. I made my decision. No more guilt. No more explaining myself to people who had already made up their minds. I walked away, and I didn't look back. Cutting off my parents was supposed to be the end of it. No more fights over money that wasn't theirs. No more guilt tripping. No more pressure. I thought they'd finally let it go and move on with their lives. I should have known better. It started with a bank notification, an alert for a flagged transaction attempt. At first, I assumed it was some random scam, the kind you get from phishing emails pretending to be your bank. But when I checked, my heart nearly stopped. Someone had tried to withdraw money from my personal savings account. The transaction had been blocked, but the fact that someone even attempted it sent a cold chill down my spine. I was the only one with access. Or at least, I was supposed to be. I called my bank immediately, my hands shaking as I waited for a representative to pick up. After verifying my identity, they explained that someone had attempted to access my account using an old joint account login. That didn't make sense. I had separated my finances years ago. But then it hit me. When I was a teenager, my parents set up a joint account for me. At the time, I didn't question it. It was just something they did to help manage my finances. But once I started working and earning my own money, I had moved everything to an account solely under my name. Or so I thought. Apparently, some old information was still on file, and my parents had tried to use it. The bank had flagged the attempt as fraud since the credentials were outdated and the transfer failed. No money had been taken, but now my account had extra security measures in place. The representative on the phone strongly suggested that I file a police report. The very idea of pressing criminal charges against my own parents made me feel sick. Instead, I called them. My mother answered on the first ring, her voice overly sweet, like she had been expecting my call. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Did you try to steal money from my account?" She gasped, like the very idea was offensive. "What? Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" I clenched my jaw. "Don't play dumb. The bank flagged an attempted transfer from an old joint login. You were the only other person who had access to that account. Was it you, or was it Dad?" Silence. Then, my father took the phone from her. "You wouldn't give it willingly," he said, his tone completely neutral. "So we had no choice. No shame. No apology. Just entitlement." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. For hours, I paced around my apartment, trying to process what had just happened. Even after everything they had already done, this was a new level. They had tried to steal from me. And the worst part? I still felt guilty. That was what really got to me. Even after being cut off, even after publicly humiliating me at a fundraiser, even after trying to manipulate me into giving up my inheritance, I still felt guilty about the idea of reporting them. It wasn't rational, I knew that. But they had conditioned me for years to feel like I was the problem, that everything was my fault. I didn't report them, but I did tell my grandfather. He was furious. The next day, my dad's siblings, who usually stayed out of family drama, finally called my parents out. My uncle, who had been neutral up until now, told them they had gone too far, that if they needed money so badly, they should sell their own belongings instead of trying to steal from their own daughter. My grandfather, who controlled the inheritance fund, was so enraged that he put extra security measures on my inheritance, too. Not only could my parents not touch it, but if they even tried to access it again, a lawyer would be involved. That night, my grandmother called me. She didn't try to pressure me into forgiving them. She didn't say I should let it go or keep the peace. She just said, "I'm proud of you for standing your ground." Meanwhile, my friends were in shock. Some of them had seen family drama before, but none of them could believe my parents had actually tried to steal from me. One of my closest friends flat out told me, "Lauren, you need to cut them off completely. Like, legally." She wasn't wrong, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step yet. My parents weren't done, though. A few days later, my mother called again. But this time, she was crying. She went on and on about how I was tearing the family apart, how Nathan was suffering, how they were just trying to do what was best. It wasn't an apology. It was a guilt trip. I didn't fall for it. Then Nathan took it public. He posted a long, dramatic rant on social media about how greedy, selfish people abandon their family when times get tough. How some people only care about money and forget where they came from. He didn't name me, but everyone knew who he was talking about. His supporters rushed to comfort him, calling him brave, telling him they stood by him. Some even left comments asking who had betrayed him. A few people tagged me. Then one of my cousins, one of the few I still spoke to, sent me screenshots from a private family group chat. The messages were worse than I expected. My mother called me a disappointment. My father said I was abandoning Nathan. Some relatives outright called me selfish beyond words. The only person who defended me? My grandfather. He told them all that if they wanted to drain their own bank accounts for Nathan, they were welcome to. But I wasn't obligated to do anything. That night, I decided I needed to talk to Nathan one last time. In person. When I showed up at my parents' house, my mother barely acknowledged me. My father wouldn't even look at me. But Nathan was waiting. I told him the truth. I wasn't abandoning him. I wanted to help. But I wouldn't be manipulated. He just stared at me. Then he shook his head. "You'll never understand." That was the last real conversation we had. When I turned to leave, my father finally spoke. If you're not willing to support your brother, then you're not welcome here. And that was it. No more pretending. No more guilt tripping. Either I gave up my inheritance, or I was out of the family. I made my decision. No more guilt. No more explaining myself to people who had already made up their minds. I walked away, and I didn't look back. For the first time in months, I thought things had finally settled down. My parents had cut me off, Nathan had played the victim, and the rest of the family had chosen their sides. I wasn't expecting an apology, but I had hoped that at the very least, they would finally leave me alone. That hope didn't last long. It started with an email from HR at work. A formal notice about an anonymous complaint. The message was vague, only stating that a serious allegation had been made against me and that an investigation would be conducted. My stomach dropped. I had never received anything like this before, and immediately, something felt off. When I got to the meeting, HR laid it all out. The complaint accused me of making discriminatory remarks against disabled individuals. Specifically, it claimed that my attitude toward disabled family members was problematic and insensitive. That's when it clicked. There was only one group of people who had ever accused me of being insensitive to disabled people: my parents and Nathan. HR had to take the complaint seriously. A full investigation was launched. My coworkers were interviewed. Every single one of them backed me up. I had never made any such remarks, had never mistreated anyone. There was no proof, because none of it had ever happened. Still, I needed to know who was behind this. My boss, who fully supported me, let me see the original complaint. The email was a mess, poorly written, full of dramatic accusations, and packed with oddly specific details about my family that no one at work should have known. It wasn't just sloppily written. It was obvious that whoever had sent it had no idea how HR investigations actually worked. I had the IT department trace the email source. The IP address was registered to someone in my parents' neighborhood. It wasn't a direct link to their house, but it was close enough that I knew exactly who was responsible. They had tried to cover their tracks, but not well enough. My own family had sat down, typed out a fake complaint, and sent it directly to my workplace in an attempt to get me fired. I called my mother. I didn't even try to be calm this time. She played dumb, acted shocked, insisted she had no idea what I was talking about. But the moment I mentioned the IP address, there was silence. Then she hung up. Minutes later, I got a text from Nathan. "You deserved a wake-up call." No denial, no defense, just pure, bitter spite. HR wrapped up the investigation quickly after that. I was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the damage had been done. Even though my coworkers knew the truth, I could tell they were cautious around me now. Not because they believed the complaint, but because the situation had been so bizarre. Who does something like this to their own family? My boss, thankfully, was on my side. He warned me that if my family continued to harass me, I could pursue legal action. The idea of taking my own parents and brother to court made me sick, but I knew now that they weren't going to stop. The next day, my mother sent me another long message. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't regret. It was more justification. "We were just trying to hold you accountable." Like they thought they had the right to punish me. Like they still believed they could control me. By then, the news had spread to the extended family. Some relatives were horrified, disgusted that my own parents had tried to sabotage my career. Others, they told me to let it go. They're your parents. They were just desperate. Maybe you should have helped more. That was it for me. I was done. I contacted a lawyer and had a cease and desist letter sent to my parents. It was officially documented now. If they tried anything again, I would take legal action. But Nathan wasn't finished. A few days later, he went on another social media meltdown. He posted about how some people are cold and heartless, how families should take care of each other, how some people only care about themselves. He still didn't mention me by name, but everyone knew. And then something unexpected happened. One of my cousins, someone who had originally defended them, reached out. "This is going too far." That was all they said, but it was enough. That's when I realized this wasn't about guilt anymore. They weren't just trying to manipulate me into helping Nathan. They were actively trying to destroy my life. First, they tried to steal from me. When that didn't work, they tried to ruin my reputation. And when that failed, they tried to get me fired. After the HR stunt failed, I thought maybe, just maybe, they would back off. But if there was one thing I had learned, it was that my parents didn't quit when they were losing. They doubled down. I got home from work late one evening, exhausted, ready to just crash. As soon as I stepped out of my car, I saw them standing outside my apartment building. My parents. They weren't here for a friendly visit. Before I could even say anything, my father marched toward me, voice raised, loud enough that people started watching. He was furious, ranting about how I was tearing the family apart, how I had left Nathan to suffer while I lived my perfect life. My mother took a different approach, full-on tears, sobbing about how I was heartless, selfish, that I had abandoned them in their time of need. And then they got to the real reason they were here. They wanted money. Not a one-time payment. A monthly payment. Something reasonable, they said, to help Nathan adjust to his new life. So that I wouldn't have to feel guilty anymore. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. I told them straight up, I didn't owe them anything. Not a cent. That's when my father lost it. He shoved past me, trying to force his way inside the building, yelling, calling me a selfish, ungrateful brat, making a scene right there in the lobby. I didn't even have to call security. A neighbor did it for me. Within minutes, a security guard was there, escorting them out. People in the building were staring, whispering. My mother kept up the act, crying like she was the victim, but my father kept fighting until he was finally dragged out the door. That night, I got a text from Nathan. Either you help me, or you're dead to me. That was it. No more playing nice. I blocked his number. Then I blocked both my parents' numbers. The next day, I went straight to a lawyer and filed a restraining order. I was done waiting for them to finally respect my boundaries. They weren't going to stop, so I had to make them stop. And, of course, that's when the family group chat exploded. Some relatives were horrified at what my parents had done. Others, they still defended them. They just want what's best for Nathan. You didn't have to go this far. But I ignored all of it. I was done explaining myself. Just to be safe, I informed my job about the situation in case my parents tried another stunt. My boss was completely on my side. He told me to document everything. Then came the final guilt trip. My mother sent me an email. A long, emotional, dramatic essay full of nonsense. When we die, you'll regret this. I didn't even open it. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a weight had been lifted. But I also knew they weren't done. So I did what I should have done from the start. I shared my story on Reddit. And the overwhelming support? It reassured me of one thing. I wasn't the villain here. I thought cutting them off would be the end of it. That they would finally stop their obsession with me, stop trying to guilt-trip me, stop trying to ruin my life. But I underestimated just how deeply they believed that I owed them. That no matter what they did, I was still supposed to be the obedient daughter, still supposed to put my family above myself, still supposed to pay for their mistakes. A few weeks after I blocked my parents and Nathan, a cousin, one who had originally defended them, reached out. At first, I thought it was going to be another attempt to guilt-trip me, but what they told me changed everything. Nathan's medical fund was a lie. This cousin had seen him spending money like crazy. A brand new gaming setup, designer clothes, even a vacation. That didn't make sense. Nathan wasn't working, and my parents had been crying poverty for months. Where was the money coming from? It didn't take long to find out. Nathan had convinced multiple family members to donate to his so-called medical fund. People had given a lot of money, believing it was covering hospital bills, physical therapy, home modifications, things he actually needed. Except almost none of the money had gone to that. A mutual friend sent me screenshots from Nathan's private Instagram. He had been flaunting everything. Photos of expensive new purchases, overpriced takeout, luxury items he had no business buying. He had been living like nothing was wrong, all while my parents were still begging for more donations. I needed proof, so I called my grandfather. He had access to some of the financial details, especially since he had refused to give Nathan my inheritance. When I asked how much of the money had actually gone toward medical expenses, the answer was almost nothing. I texted Nathan, not even accusing him of anything, just asking a simple question. Where's the money really going? He blocked me. That was all the confirmation I needed. Word started spreading fast. Some of the relatives who had donated were furious. They had believed him, truly thought they were helping him survive. Now, they were realizing they had just been scammed. One cousin decided to confront my mother about it, and her response was even worse than I expected. She didn't deny it. She didn't try to defend it. She just said, he deserves nice things after everything he's lost. No regret. No shame. Just more entitlement. My father wasn't much better. He insisted that it was Nathan's money to spend as he pleased, that no one had the right to question how he used it. But then the real problem started. A distant uncle, one of the biggest donors, found out. He had given a significant amount, fully believing it was for medical costs. And he wasn't taking it lightly. He was furious, and, even worse for Nathan, he was threatening legal action. Nathan, in a panic, tried to get ahead of it by playing the victim again. He went on another social media rant about how people only care about money, how no one understands his struggles, how he was being attacked by his own family just for trying to find happiness again. At first, some people sympathized. But then, more relatives started asking questions. Some of the people who had once defended him were now hesitating, realizing that something wasn't adding up. And then it got worse. One of my aunts, someone who worked in finance, decided to dig deeper. She checked Nathan's spending history, and she found everything. Thousands spent on gaming consoles, designer clothing, high-end gadgets, constant expensive takeout. Money that had been donated for his medical expenses had been wasted on complete nonsense. At a small family gathering, Nathan was finally confronted directly. My uncle, the one threatening to sue, put him on the spot in front of everyone. He asked one simple question: "Where did my $10,000 go?" Nathan had no answer. He just sat there, staring at the floor, while my parents desperately tried to intervene, making excuses, trying to change the subject. But for the first time, it wasn't working. Some relatives still tried to downplay it, insisting that Nathan had just made bad choices and that it wasn't really fraud. But as more evidence surfaced, as people realized just how much money had been wasted, even his strongest supporters started distancing themselves. My parents, realizing that legal threats were being thrown around, panicked. For months, they had defended Nathan without hesitation, had enabled him, had fought for him. But now that lawsuits were coming, they started backpedaling. My father, who had always spoken so confidently, suddenly changed his tone. He pulled Nathan aside, whispering in hushed, tense voices. My mother still clung to her defenses, insisting it was just a misunderstanding and we can fix this, but no one was buying it anymore. At this point, Nathan's former supporters started publicly calling him out. People who had once been on his side were now demanding refunds. And Nathan? He went completely silent. Then came the final betrayal. After everything, after fighting for him for so long, my parents finally turned on him. Not because they had a change of heart, not because they realized they had done something wrong, but because they realized they couldn't afford to keep him anymore. They had spent so much time focusing on Nathan's needs, draining their resources, that they never planned for their own. And when Nathan stopped bringing in sympathy money, he became expendable. They kicked him out. After everything they had done, after everything they had sacrificed for him, they finally abandoned him when it stopped benefiting them. And that's when I got one last message. An unknown number. It was Nathan. He didn't ask for an apology. He didn't even try to manipulate me with guilt. He just sent one simple message. "Are you really going to let me be homeless?" I stared at it for a long moment. I read it twice. Then I typed my final response. "You did this to yourself." And I blocked the number. For the first time, I knew this was truly the end. And then, the real karma hit. With Nathan out of the house, my parents lost their last excuse for demanding money from the family. No more, "We need help for Nathan." No more, "He's struggling and you're selfish." They had nothing left to leverage. And suddenly, they were alone. The same family members they had once guilt-tripped into donating were no longer picking up their calls. Even their closest friends had finally seen through them. The best part? Many of my extended relatives privately reached out to me. Some even apologized for doubting me. They told me they had watched everything unfold and that they admired how I handled it. I wasn't the villain they had been led to believe. And the difference in my life? Immediate. The peace. The quiet. The freedom. No more late-night phone calls. No more threats. No more manipulation. No more guilt. For the first time in my life, I was completely free. And I never looked back. If you like the story, subscribe to Thread Chronicles right away and listen to new stories every day. Let us know what you like the most in the comments. Write what you think about this and what could be done better.